Hi everyone and welcome back. Textures, that's what we're going to be doing today. We'll start with some foliage textures I think. As you can see I've got a template here and what I'm going to do is, on my sketchbook, is I'm going to actually just draw the largest of the circles. Okay, so we've got something to work in. I'm going to do each texture in one of these circles, and I'm not going to concentrate on the shape today of trees or branches or anything like that at all. It's just only going to be the texture, and once we've got that mastered, then we can start looking at the shapes and everything like that. But I will be doing a dark to light sort of shaded version of this, so you can actually see the texture and the tone all in one go. But then, like I say, you'll have to apply that to this, whatever shape of tree you're drawing, or if you're having trouble with branch shapes and tree shapes, then we can certainly look at that in another video. But just for now, I'll just draw a circle there. In fact, I'll draw a couple. Just to start with. I'm sure we can sort of fill them up with textures then. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera right down. So just fasten your seatbelts. It might get a little bit bouncy. No, I think that's about okay. Okay. Now the trouble is the camera is probably, I should say, I'm just kind of gauging it now on my pen. Well, the camera is from there to there, whatever distance that is, about 3-4 inches from the surface of the paper. So obviously I can't stand the pen up or anything, so I'm going to have to be working at a bit of a funny angle today, but I want to get you nice and close in so you can see. Right, okay, so this is an HB pencil, and I'm just going to start just lightly, and I'm thinking, well, before I actually put any graphite down there, first of all I'm thinking in the terms of 3 tones. That's all: light, medium and dark. The light is going to be the paper, the medium is going to be the HB pencil, and then the darks we'll put in later with a 4B pencil or 5B or 6B, something similar. But what I'm going to just start to do, if I just bring a bit of scrap paper in first of all, I can show you sort of on a large scale. I'm kind of doing circles like that, but I'm sort of mixing it up a little bit so it's more like squiggles. Okay, it looks, I mean, it really literally looks like I've just gone like that, but there is more sort of method to the madness, if you like. And you'll see why as I'm going along, because what's going to happen is we're going to start getting left with little white dots that'll just kind of happen as we're doing this texture. It's a very funny kind of thing. It's, it's sort of a line and a squiggle and a scribble and a line. It's just very random sort of sort of a pattern. And the idea is it's going to be very similar to cross hatching. Apart from with cross hatching, I can't get my pen in at the angle now. With cross hatching, we're just using straight lines. Okay, so if we wanted this part here darker, we'd sort of hatch at different angles, and we get sort of a darker corner building up in that area. But to get the lights and darks with this, what we're doing, once we've sort of gone over it roughly once, then we're going to sort of hatch again and go over it again, but only in the areas that we want darker. So it's like cross hatching but with squiggles. So now you can see this area just here is starting to get darker, and this area here there's sort of less of it and it's kind of lighter. So that's very basically how we're going to achieve the tone. So hopefully I've got you close enough in so that you can actually see. Is the camera focusing? I noticed I've got a little bit of trouble with the autofocus when I'm quite as close as this, but we'll give it a go and see what we can do. So I'm starting off very light pressure, very light, because what I'm going to do, we're going to imagine that the light's coming in from this way. Okay, so this area is going to be fairly light and this area here is going to be dark. So we always start with the lightest area. And of course we can vary the size of these squiggles and scribbles, keep them tighter, make them a little bit looser. You know, that way we're going to get sort of larger highlights left if we you know, do it looser. And we're going to get little small highlights if we do it tighter. And you don't have to do the whole thing loose or the whole thing tight, you can kind of mix it up a little bit. And it just takes some time as well. So I'll just try and lift the sketchbook closer to the camera so you can get a really good look at that. You see that that's all it has to be to start with. Try not to sort of get into the habit with your drawing hand of sort of repetitive shapes, you know, just like keep going around in circular motions. Keep it very random. I think I've said before it's like handwriting, but you're not actually spelling anything, and it's all just overlapping and making a mess. And you automatically, like I say, get these sort of almost like little circular leaf shapes just happening. And they're eventually going to be our highlights. And because I know that this area here is going to be darker, I can just start to apply just a little bit more pressure. Or you could just continue in the same way if you wanted to, and then layer it to get the darks. But you know, if you know what you want, you can actually just start to, you know, put the darks in now if you know that that's where they're going. So I'm just going to press just a little bit harder, not too hard, just, you know. I think I've mentioned before that working in 3 tones you know, is a good way to do things, because all the other tones, all the other sort of varying mid-tones there, they'll all eventually just take care of themselves. We don't have to be concerned with them, they just kind of happen when you're doing this technique. Just darken up a little bit around that edge. I mean, you could almost imagine this is topiary, if you like. You know, if we were to put a little trunk just coming out the bottom there, I'm sure you've seen those kind of things that they do, you know, when they cut the hedges. I think it's called topiary, I think, isn't it? And they cut them into perfect circles and all sorts of wonderful shapes. But obviously if we're not working in a circle here, we're working, you know, in a tree shape. It's the same sort of principle, apart from we'd have more sky holes. But we just have to look where they are in the picture and just, you know, leave that area open wherever they are. Okay, so now we've got basically a first layer in, and we already know where the lights and the darks are. If I just keep zooming you in so you can actually see the actual mess that it that it looks actually to start with. Okay, so now I'm still going to use the HB pencil. I'm going to start working from the darker side now. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing. But being mindful, I want to sort of get some sort of lighter area just there. So as I get closer to that area, I'm just easing off the pressure a little bit and making the marks a little bit more a bit more spaced out and almost sort of dotting it into the lighter area. So in effect what I'm doing, that's a bad example this is, but we've got this darker area here, so instead of going over it with a second coat and just making everything dark, what I'm now doing when I get to the lighter area, instead of keep going like this, these close like squiggles, what I'm doing now is sort of leaving them really sort of open, almost little dots and squiggles that aren't joining up anymore, and they get more joined up and closer together the more into the shaded part they go. And that way we'll get a nice transition, because sometimes I see, you know, we have some people do very hard transitions, you know, they get a very dark area and then a very light area, and sometimes they just need it to be just worked on a little bit more on the transitions to get a nicer sort of blend. Some branches are really light with a very dark, for example, if I just get an eraser and put a light sort of branch in there, you just have to use your imagination with this, okay? You know, some branches really are sort of sticking out and catching the light, and directly underneath them really can be dark. With a very harsh transition. You know, if that's the case, obviously that's you know, the way to do it, but usually there will be very subtle tones in there as well, so just be mindful of that as well. Okay, right, so back to this then. So like I say, I'm just going to be still working on the darker area. Just kind of feathering it out, little dots and dashes, as we get into the lighter area. Sometimes you'll see sort of uncomfortable shapes, I call them. Like we've got a line there and a line there. Obviously I've not purposely put those lines in. So it can be a good idea just to get the eraser and just sort of get rid of them just by spotting over them a little bit like that. We can go back in. Okay, I think that's about as much as I want to do with the HB pencil, so if I get that nice and close for you, you can see kind of what that needs to look like. It's not far off a carpet texture as well. Somebody asked about that, so I mean it's a very similar method, but I have got another method. Can't speak again tonight. I've got another method for drawing carpets, which I'll show you. So now we can increase the highlights a little bit with an eraser if we want to. Maybe just sort of lose the outline as well. That can always be distracting in the lighter areas. So just, again, just little dots. And just feather them into the darker area so we get a nicer sort of transition there. Okay, so now with a 4B pencil, we'll start to get some of the real dark shaded areas in. And I'm just going to start right at the very bottom. And I'm using exactly the same technique, you know, little sort of squiggles. think I've mentioned before, somebody called this squiggleism. Actually, I mean, you know, as funny as that sounds, it's actually a very good way to describe it, really. You know, if pointillism is little dots, well, why can't this be called squiggleism? Because that's really what it is, you know, little squiggles. Probably started a new word there. And now, as I'm working into the lighter areas, I'm actually being a little bit more deliberate by still leaving some of the lighter areas. So as I'm doing this kind of squiggly motion, I'm not kind of purposely outlining everyone, that'll just look too much. But just to kind of leave the odd one here and there and be careful not to, you know, go over it. It's kind of the look that we want. I'm getting that line appearing there, aren't I? I wonder if it's something wrong with the paper in that area. Oh well, no worries. Now this is really where the shape and the form starts to happen. I mean, I said I wasn't going to actually do any branch shapes, but I'll just try and see if I can just almost do like a little branch or something. And all it is just by putting these darker kind of squiggleism marks under a lighter area, and already the top part starts to stand out a little bit, particularly if we start to put a few more highlights on there. Can you see? It almost starts to look like, you know, this area is coming more forward. That's not actually the look that I'm going for, so I'm going to just dab that out with the eraser. But yeah, this would be the stage where you start to define the shapes and everything for your branches. It's a good method to learn because it will cover you for a lot of things, you know, not just foliage. Like I say, I mean, carpet textures, textures on clothing, sort of shrubby kind of bushes and undergrowth and things like that. Even textures on rocks. Okay, so now I'm just going to start to just kind of feather that out a little bit. So we get a smoother transition between the light area and the dark area. Press just a little bit firmer now, just around the edge. But still trying to preserve a few light areas because we don't just want to shade that area in or we're just going to lose all the texture. So by keep doing this kind of squiggleism technique, you know, we can go quite dark and still get texture as well. Okay, I think that's just about You can keep working on this for hours, you know, building up the detail, the texture, the lights, the darks. I'll just zoom you in on that. So that's very, excuse me, that's very much, you know, a basic texture for foliage. And of course you can play around with that. In fact, let's just do, you can actually start to just blend and soften it back a little bit. Be careful that I'm using a tortilla on here. I shouldn't really be using that. I should be using a cotton bud or a very soft blender. I don't want to actually lose all the texture that I just put in, but just to soften it back a little bit so it's not quite so harsh looking. I'm just pressing very lightly with it. And then you can use a fine eraser. Start to pull a few highlights out. So we're still, you know, all we've used here is just two pencils, an HB and the 4B, you know, a medium and a dark, and we're just depending on the light of the paper for the lights. But now we've blended in and we're going back in with the eraser again. What we're doing, as well as creating highlights, we're actually creating loads of very subtle mid-tones, because the blender won't blend back the whites completely in some areas. And then the eraser won't erase completely in some areas as well. So you end up getting loads of subtle little tones. I'll just zoom you in again. That's the effect, you know, that's the kind of thing. You know, if you imagine that with branch shapes and it's a tree shape and not just a circle, it's actually a very convincing effect, and that's one of them that I use quite most often, in fact, for you know, tree foliage and landscapes and things like that. Right, okay, so on to the next one. I'm going to do what I'd call a looser kind of texture with this one. I'm going to actually use the tortillon or blender, and you can just spot, just literally dab. I mean, this is called pointillism. You know, the spots are going to be bigger, obviously, than that one. But this kind of method is good for a more blurry effect, maybe background trees, or again, kind of, you know, scrubby foliage that's in the foreground that you don't want the eye to dwell too long on. You just want it to sort of just be there, but just look soft and blurry. You know, this can be quite a good one. Then we can start doing that sort of squiggleism kind of thing a little bit, here and there. You'll need to keep charging up the blender though on some graphite at the side of you, which I haven't got because I'm always badly prepared as usual. If you get a few darker spots where you don't want them, just dab them out with the eraser. I'll just go in with the different blender. Should have some more graphite on this one, I think. Hopefully. In fact, I'll just scribble a bit of 9B pencil on this Bit of paper at the side of me. Apologies for my voice, by the way. Don't know if I've got a cold or allergies. I've sort of been like this for, I don't know, about the last week or two. It's sort of been coming on and off and on and off. I think I've got some sort of allergies, I'm not sure, but anyway, I've just scribbled some 9B pencil on the scrap paper at the side of me. I'll just charge the end of the blender up, and I'll just see if I can get some darker areas going. Get a little bit more. Looks like the moon, doesn't it, or something? But I mean, jokingly, I mean, why not? You know, if we made this a little bit bigger, some of these shapes a little bit bigger, it just goes to show you what you can do with some of these textures. So like I say, you know, you can use that one for carpet. You could use it obviously for foliage. Even sort of like a gravelly beach or something like that, you know, it's depending on how much you kind of soften them down and highlight them afterwards, you can almost determine that, you know, what it actually is. Again, just gently blend it over a little bit, just to soften it back, because we're trying to imagine that that's kind of foliage, you know, way off into the distance or something like that. And again, you can go back in with the pencil eraser or the Tombow eraser, doesn't really matter, or even the blue tack, you know, the kneadable eraser. In fact, we'll use that. Well, now I've got it, and just, actually it's not really dark enough for that, but you can just sort of, you know, add highlights. Just, you know, by spotting with the pencil eraser. You know, and it's how far you actually want to go on that. You could literally leave it like this now, or you can actually go back in with a pencil and start to get more definition in there, which is something I often do actually. It just seems to add that little bit more contrast and shape. It just makes the whole thing pop just a little bit more. And again, you know, it depends how much time you've got, because it can be quite time consuming. So I do recommend actually, you know, getting your sketchbooks out, or even a scrap piece of paper or something, and just drawing circles on there. Just only focus on the texture. I can blend that in a little bit. Usually I use a finer blender to get in between the light and the dark areas there. That's just another fairly simple one. Okay. Actually, I just want to bring you back to this one a minute, because I've got a picture here that I've done a while ago. It's that one of the barn. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lay the tree down next to it. I hope I've not got any glare on that because I've got the plastic cover on it. But can you see? It's virtually the same. Maybe this one just needs softening down a little bit. And then maybe a few little more spots with the eraser just to get it more or less like that, or even like that one there. You know, this is actually, let me just even bring it closer if I can. Kind of see the actual pencil marks and the detail there. You know, at close quarters it doesn't look very good at all. It really does look a mess, but you know, in the context of a landscape, it starts to look good. And it's exactly the same there. I mean, really that, you know, does need a little bit more blending, just softening back a little bit, just to make it more like that. But you know, essentially it's the same process. Oh yeah, and I've got this one on the back here as well, the one you've just seen me do. And again, look, it's the same type of thing. Okay, these are a little bit darker, that's for sure, you know, particularly underneath, but you know, all we've got to do there is just go in again with the dark pencil and create a few darker areas. It's the same principle, same thing. Okay. Okay, now another method I use for this sort of thing. You've probably seen me do it with graphite powder, but you can use one of these things. I really like this pencil. It's the Kohinoor Versatile 5347, and it's got a, oh, what's it got? Is it 5.6 or 5.3 millimeter lead in there? And it's great just for blocking in areas quickly and stuff. But it's also nice for, this is a 2B as well, by the way. It's also nice for doing that technique, but on a larger scale. You know, just little circular motions. Not really bothering with the squiggly stuff, just little circles for this. And you can see already how the little white spots are already kind of building up there, look. You know, just through these little kind of circular motions. I never really bother sharpening this pencil. I purposely leave it blunt so I can get a thicker line with it. And this is great for doing what I call underdrawings, where, you know, as you can see, I'm not really bothered at all what it looks like. I'm just literally blocking in, but with a little bit of texture just to start with. This is a good way to get large areas filled in quickly. You know, if you've got a whole bank of trees or something in the middle distance, this is a good way to start the process off. And this is also very similar to the three-part process, which I kind of talk about a lot. I don't see it, well, I don't know, I mean, other artists obviously use it, but I've kind of called it a three-part process. It's something, I'm not going to claim that I invented it. I probably did, I haven't got a clue, but it's just something I do that kind of works for me. And that is, you know, first of all, just get some graphite down in whatever shape or form, whether it be graphite powder, a clutch pencil like this, or, you know, a fine mechanical pencil like that. Just get some graphite down and then look what we're left with and take it from there. Like in this case, I'd want to, in fact, nasty dark line just on the top there. We'll just do something with that quickly. But I just want to soften that back. So this is the second process. So it's putting graphite down, blending it in or erasing if it looks fine without the blender, but just kind of blending it in a little bit in this case. And now, although that's filled in, it's not filled in with what you call nice flat equal shade lay down of graphite. It's quite, you know, textured in its own right. We haven't got really any hard detail or sharp detail in there, you know, because we've blended it. So I'm just cleaning my pencil eraser at the side of me. And now we can go in with this. And we can almost like do the squiggleism with the pencil eraser, or just little dabs and spots, or a combination of both. So this is like the third part of the process. So it's graphite, blend, then erase or highlight. And then from that alone, it should then tell you what it needs after that. You know, if we just look at this section I've just done here, this kind of top section, I mean that might be alright in some cases for certain bushes and things, but I'm still thinking it's very low contrast, so I'll just finish it off. So I'm thinking, yeah, I've got to go back in there with some darks, but I've not got to, but I'm just imagining that, you know, it's in a landscape scenario and need some darks in there. So again, I'll go back in either with the dark pencil or the medium pencil, and it's back to this kind of little circular motions in and out of the light areas, just to emphasise them even more, just in certain areas or the whole area, depending on what your picture requires. Sometimes it, you know, might need the whole thing doing, other times it might just need a little, you know, just little areas, just very subtly, just kind of here and there. You know, it all depends. And then you can kind of soften those back a little bit so it ties in with the rest of it and doesn't look too sharp. You know, sometimes it can be a bit of an issue for beginners, I think. I think they can confuse the dark tones with sharp detail, because, you know, as soon as that dark goes on there, on top of that kind of soft, subdued background, and then you start to go in with the, you know, sharp pencil, instantly you're going to start creating some very sharp detail, and that's not necessarily what we want. And I think people think that, you know, oh, it doesn't look like smoothies when, you know, I see him do it. Well, you know, it's a case of keep working on it and keep just softening and blending those areas back. Doesn't matter if you overlap the white areas, and you can also go back to that spotting technique where I kind of push down on the paper and a little flick off to the side one way or the other, just to move the graphite just a little bit, and that'll blend it and create some of those, you know, mid-tones, what we'll talk about, those subtle mid-tones which create themselves without us having to sort of select a pencil and draw them in. And you just keep working on it until you're sort of happy with the shape and the texture. It's beginning to resemble that one a little bit there, but you'll see that there is actually a difference. We can go in with the eraser again and get some more highlights in there. You know, if you've got some big dark blobby areas which look a bit wrong, just a couple of little spots over them. You'll soon, you know, start to create some sort of foliage effects and things like that. Of course, like I say, you don't have to do it with that one. You can get some finer marks with the Tombow. You know, using this kind of squiggleism method. you know, in their own right, they don't look much like foliage, do they? You know, when they're drawn in circles like this. But as I just showed you with the drawing there, and when I place that next to it, you can start to see that this is exactly what I've done. It's the same technique that I've used on pretty much all this range of trees. You know, they're not all exactly the same as that one. You know, some have been erased more, some have been darkened a little bit more, some are a little bit more wispy on the tops. So it's getting that variation, and you can also see just here as well on this one, that's more of a kind of a spotting technique to create that looser kind of foliage there. So when these techniques, these textures are actually put into context, you know, the context of a landscape or of a carpet or whatever, you'll start to see they actually make sense. And again, you know, there's no reason why I can't just completely blend all that in. In fact, I'll do it. Let me do it right now. Really soften all that back. Kind of defeats a little bit what I've just done. You know, and then go back in again with the eraser and make different shapes, like maybe bigger shapes, more pronounced sort of branch shapes and things like that. You know, you really can keep working on these and slightly alter them to get just the right look that you want. Just purely through that three-part process. Put some graphite down, blend it in, start erasing a few highlights, then assess it, see what it looks like, and repeat any one of those three processes. You know, either add more graphite or more highlights, or blend what you've erased into the graphite a little bit more to tone it down. You know, they're things that only you can decide, you know, in your pictures. So there we go, sort of playing around a little bit there with the tone. Well, the texture, should I say. So I think you get the idea, or hopefully you get the idea. Okay, for this last one, what I'm going to do on this one is actually imagine we've actually got some branch shapes in there. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about shapes too much, but these three here are all a little bit samey, but different. But this one I want to try and get some lights and darks and some more contrast, some more form and shape and everything. So I'm just going to imagine that this is a tree shape, okay, and again we've got the light coming in from the same direction, and I'm going to purposely just kind of draw in, or even, you know, imagine that we've got some sort of branch shapes in there. Okay, just something like that. What I'm trying, I'll just do a quick. So what I'm trying to just kind of do is just imagine, instead of we've got the circle, we've got like a, you know, just a rough old kind of tree shape there. Just, you know, I know you love my crude drawings, so I'm trying to keep it as rough as possible for you. And what I'm trying to do now is just kind of almost like this kind of thing, and get some definition with the actual branch shapes. You know, instead of it all being like that, we're now going to get some lights and darks and some sort of branchy textures going on there. So I marked out, you know, just roughly the shape of some branches there, and obviously we don't, you know, want to end up with seeing this line or any hard lines there. We're going to kind of blend this all in into something like one of these three. So we'll start in the lightest area with the HB pencil again, just nice light pressure and squiggleism. It'll be easy if we just call it squiggleism, then I don't have to explain every time that it's like doing handwriting but you're not spelling anything, and little circular motions but then squiggles, and that just takes too long. So once we've all got the idea, we'll just call it squiggleism. I know that word doesn't exist. Well, it may do actually. I don't think it does, but I just think it's a great way just to describe actually what I do. So we've got a lighter area there. Now on that kind of seam just there, I'm just going to make this area just a little bit darker than what's above it. Not too dark, just like that. Okay, and now the same again on this one. Just very lightly on the top edge, because we've got to imagine that that's catching the light just there. And you can leave quite a bit of paper showing if you want to. Again, keeping it darker as it gets closer to the top of the next branch below it. Okay, so it's starting to build up nicely. It doesn't look anything yet, but it will do eventually. And the same again on this one. I might even change the shape of these as we go. What I often do, I put these guidelines down, but I never seem to stick to them rigidly. I always add other little branches and leaf patterns here and there, when I see the opportunities arising. And that's another thing, look for the opportunities. You'll have to, I'm sure something will happen with this, and I'll point it out to you if it does, what I'm talking about these opportunities. I've gone a little bit dark just along that edge there. That's it. Sometimes when I'm talking I forget what I'm doing. Again, just feathering it out towards the light area. Just little dots and dashes, and keeping it dark around the lower part there. Probably even go a bit darker on that one. Okay, and the last one. Okay, I think that'll just about do for that for now. Okay, and at this stage you can actually go in with this and start dabbing a little bit if you want to. You don't have to, I mean this will just soften down a little bit, just what we've done. So I'll just do it just for the sake of showing you really. Okay. So already, we can start to see a little bit of form happening now, can't we, doing that. Let's get the darker pencil now. So we've got some, obvious lines here which are not looking very natural at all really. It looks more like waves, doesn't it, than tree shape. So now what I want to do is, with the dark pencil, just work into the lighter area a little bit. Just a few little dots and stuff, and then just make the area above it darker. And again, feather it out into the lighter area. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm doing, I'm obviously darkening this area up along the edge here, but instead of following this line, having an obvious line like that as I go darker, I'm pulling some of the darks into the highlighted area just a little bit, just so we get a nice sort of broken edge, so it looks, natural. It looks like clusters of leaves, overlapping each other and everything, instead of, just an obvious hard line. You can even sort of come down a little bit more and start creating all sorts of shapes and different things, like that little bit there. I'll do the same along this edge. Quite a lot of little dots with this one. I'll just keep working away. Just a bit more lead there. I'll just keep working away like that until I get it all to the same sort of level as that. Okay. In fact, I'm going to bring that down a little bit there. I just feel that I just look better for some reason if I just brought that down a little bit. Again, we've got this real obvious edge just along here, look, between the lights and the darks. And if I was just to continue following that, you see what happens? It's sort of too obvious there. So these little dark spots that you just pull down over that just a little bit without losing it. You still got to sort of keep it as a light area, but it's got to kind of merge a little bit with the darker area, the darker branch, that's above it. Quite loose with this bit just here, just to try and get this done a bit quicker. Okay, and then where's it gone? There we go. And with the blender, still got quite a hard edge there, but now I'm just going to sort of do a bit more dabbing, blending with this. Still got a hard edge just there, don't like that. Okay. And you can imagine on an A4 size piece of paper, whole background of trees, doing this. This is kind of how long it actually takes, to build up these textures. So patience is key with this. Okay, so that's starting to look, a little less flat than these others. I can go in now with the eraser. Always just give it a little bit of a rub, just to keep it nice and clean. And now, this is like the opportunism bit. I'm kind of looking for sort of branch shapes which I can sort of play on a little bit. It's actually very difficult to do it within the realms of a circle. It's really playing my eyes up. I can't see the shape of the tree. I need to kind of see the rest of the shape of the tree to kind of get these to look right. You know, it's weird actually, but maybe let's have something a lighter, completely lighter area just there. Just clean the eraser a little bit. Maybe that comes down and hangs quite low down over this one. So I'm starting to you know, think about the shapes of the branches now and the highlights on the trees. Kind of like what can I say? Kind of like, is that going to be in the frame? You know, like this sort of area here. You know, I've got these shapes, these branches, this kind of thing. Okay. That's, you know, kind of the process I'm going for with this at the minute. Right, okay, so now I'm just going to use the kneadable eraser. I'm just going to scrunch that up on the end so it's like that. And well, I'll probably better explain the reason I'm not going to use that anymore. This one will give you a softer sort of highlight, and it's good for kind of blending areas together and softening them down a little bit, as well as highlighting them all at the same time. But you do have to keep doing that, you know, keep scrunching it over to a fine point, because it clogs up very quickly with graphite. I'm still thinking about, you know, preserving the shape of these branches as well. In fact, I'm just going to use the Tombow razor. I'm just going to add another plane in there, another branch. And then just darken that just a little bit. Probably not, it didn't really do anything, did it? Okay. We'll get rid of that then and just blend it out a little bit. Okay. God, I really am struggling with my voice tonight. I think I've got hay fever actually. I don't usually suffer with hay fever, but when I was out mowing the lawn the other day, my eyes were a bit sort of stinging and a bit sinusy and everything, and it's gone on for a few days. It's sort of in my throat a little bit now. That's why I think I sound a little bit rough, but I don't know if that's going to pick up on the video or not, but I apologise if I sound awful. So now I'm I mean, if this was a watercolour painting, this is what they call fiddling. You know, just kind of looking for little spots that you don't like and just maybe soften them back up a little bit. A nice sort of soft foliage effect. I think that's looking fairly okay actually. There's a few sort of darker spots which just maybe need just to be softened just a little bit. Just here and there. See, if you just keep working at it like this, you can get some really nice detail building up. And you know, to keep it soft or hard edged, you know, really detail it is up to you. You know, you don't have to go in with a 4B pencil, you can go in with 2B pencil or just an HB pencil. And I think that this one here, this tree effect just here, which I was showing you, I think this area here was all done with a 2H. I can't remember now from the video, but it looks like a 2H. And the back was done with a 2H, but then built up the darker areas with an HB. But you can see I've kind of kept it fairly soft because it's off into the background, whereas these are a little bit more detailed, a little bit more crisper looking, you know, obviously because they're in the foreground. So when you're actually doing something like this, you know, you'll have to decide, does that look too detailed, does that look too soft, you know, do I need to sort of increase the contrast a little bit? So like I said, there's some things that you know, are easy to teach people, but then there's other things which aren't easy. It's kind of down to you really, you know, what's that saying? Some things can't be taught, but they can be learnt, is that right? Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Some things can't be taught, but they can be learnt. I think that's the case of what's actually going on here. I can't actually say what I'm doing or why I'm actually doing it. I'm just kind of looking at it and going with what I feel, really. You know, with the marks that I've got here, I'm just kind of working with what I've got. I'm just trying to make it look like foliage to my mind, you know. And I think that's all you can do with yours as well. You know, and eventually you'll get to a point where you're happy and you're satisfied with the effect that you've got, hopefully. Another little trick, just get my 2H pencil, if I can find it. Is that one a 2H in there? No, that's a 4B. I don't know where it is. It's in this one here. Sorry about this, I just got to turn that around. Now this is a bit of a favourite trick of mine actually. I kind of do it in watercolour as well. It's called glazing in watercolour. I mean, I guess you could call it glazing in pencil. But basically what I'm going to do with a lighter pencil than what I've used is just very lightly start in the darker areas so I can see the effect it has. Just kind of glaze over it just a little bit. This can help to kind of unify everything, bring everything together, and it can also help to set things back a little bit in the distance, give it more of a misty kind of look. And also, once we've gone over it, particularly the lighter areas, we can then go in again with the eraser and pull out a few more highlights here and there, and that'll increase the tonal range that we've got there now. I mean, at the minute that looks really sort of bland, and you know, we've lost a lot of the detail that we had. But you know, we can go back in again with any of the erasers, the pencil eraser or the kneadable eraser. I'm just going to use the kneadable eraser so I can get some softer highlights going on there. Just on the extremes, right on the tops of the light areas. So I'm just kind of pulling up little tiny spots with this. If I want more of a sharper highlight, I'll use something like that. Okay, I can go back in with a 2H pencil. Just soften some bits back where I think it needs it. Like I said, it's very hard actually to see branch shapes within a circle like this. It's quite difficult. I didn't think it was going to be this difficult, but it's not difficult, I guess. It's just something I've not been used to doing before, but yeah, if I'd actually drawn the shape of the tree out, this would have been a whole lot easier. Okay, but I think, you know, I mean, I could play around with it for hours. I often do with these sorts of things, but I think just for the sake of the demonstration, I'm just going to leave it there for now. Just to give you an idea. Something else I wanted to quickly show you, actually, which can be a very fast technique, but it can be a little bit repetitive looking. And what I'm going to do, we've got 4 areas there. These 2 are very, very samey. This one was kind of just a bit of an experiment type thing, just to show you. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of quickly shade over that. Just put some graphite over it. I mean, that's another texture in its own right there. It's quite subtle, isn't it, that one? You see how just playing around with things, you can just come up with new ways of doing things. But what I'm trying to do is get this to be fairly sort of covered over with graphite. Okay. Now what I'm going to use is this. It's the Derwent battery eraser. Other manufacturers make a similar product, but the Derwent one is reasonably priced and it works okay. And what I'm going to do is pull out highlights with this. It might be a bit loud on the microphone. I'll see if I can do something with the sound actually. But all you do, you press that button there, and the tip rotates. And this will give you lots of highlights like that very quickly. You know, you can do large areas very quickly. You can even kind of draw sort of branch shapes in there. I'm kind of just spotting with it, you know, just dabbing. You see, the more you work on it, the different the effects, but just thought I'd quickly show you that one. Leaves a good old mess on your paper as well. So there's 4 techniques. Let me just pull the camera up a bit so I can get them all in together. There we go. So there's 4 techniques which you can use for foliage, for carpets, for all sorts of things. I mean, your imagination is your imagination, and whatever you do with it is up to you. I mean, you can probably see more in that than I can, I don't know. But the fact that they're all circles can sometimes limit your imagination. But if you just do that, you know, all these in a tree shape, or you use some of these techniques on like a gravel beach or something like that, or even on a rock, side of a rock. And it's like I say, there's no limit to this at all, because I can go back in there now and start working in some of the darks even more, etc. And then go in again and erase with that, smooth it out with that, then go back in again with whatever. You can just keep building and building and building, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you know, the grain of the paper is not going to hold any more graphite or anything like that, or you may have erased it too much and it's starting to get a little bit rough or whatever. But you can see that the possibilities are virtually endless, you know, just through this simple kind of squiggleism technique which I've sort of come up with. And also, you know, with the erasing on top of it and then going back in and working in and around it with the pencil is really what it's all about. If I just bring these in really closely and you can see each one individually. I mean, obviously that's going to be great for foreground trees and bushes, hedges, things like that. That one is going to be nicer for background. Sorry folks, the camera just cut out then. It reached its 15-minute time limit. Apologies. Yeah, I was just about to say that one would be nicer for softer, lighter backgrounds. That even looks like a carpet technique there, doesn't it? Was it James that asked about that? Yeah, I don't see why. I mean, it depends what sort of carpet it is, but I'm going to do another one after this, showing you the carpet texture that I've actually come up with. But that's kind of inspired me actually. I'm thinking, well, actually that looks more like the carpet texture than I'm going to do in the next video. But anyway, yeah, bear that one in mind as a bit of a carpet texture or a foliage texture. Might look good for sort of lichen or lichen, however you pronounce it, you know, growing on the side of rocks and things like that. And that one, you know, is a good old foliage technique which I've been using for years. So yeah, I mean, I hope that's kind of been helpful to you and showed you a little bit about foliage techniques. I'm going to do some more of these type of videos for grass. Obviously I've just mentioned one for carpets and like textile type of things. I think it's a good idea. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea actually to actually work in little circles. I actually felt very limited, you know, drawing this one here. It kind of threw me actually working in a circle. So, but I would actually recommend it just to, you know, actually practice the textures and then actually go away and sort of start putting the shapes in. I mean, one thing which might make this look a little bit better, I'm probably going to ruin it right now, but is maybe in these darker areas you might see maybe some little branches and things just in the darker areas, you know, that might sort of help you as you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh yeah, I can sort of see the kind of branch shapes now. Something like that anyway, I think you get the idea. But yeah, it's a good method for getting foliage, this one. I'm getting carried away now, I'm just going to end up drawing and drawing and drawing if I don't stop. That's the trouble with me. Right, okay, so yeah, thanks very much for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.